Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be our welcome for the next hour. We have with us one of my absolute favorite people who's given me a lot of advice that's profoundly helped me as a human being and many other young men and women out there. Mike Cernovich, author, Guerrilla Mindset, producer of Hoaxed, and he's getting a frantic text right now from very important people.
No. So I wanted to, there's something when I was doing cardio, there's something I wanted to tweet out because I'm caught in this terrible purgatory of I'm pro-Ukrainian people. I love the people. I've met the people. I've talked to the people. They have a really corrupt regime.
Sure.
And now people are calling me pro-Putin. And it's like, hold on, So it was just what I tweeted was, before we got going, was the average Ukrainian would be far right, i.e. not a total degenerate by American standards. So clearly I love the people, but their regime is bad. So
yeah, that is what the first thing.
Go ahead.
That is the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, because one of the things I think especially American media is bad at is it's so intertwined with personality and it's so intertwined with entertainment that things get sensationalized and they also get dumbed down. Everything has to be good guy versus bad guy, and every bad guy is the same. And Trump is Hitler, and he's Bolsonaro, and he's Duterte, and they're all interchangeable, which is completely nonsensical, both historically and contemporarily. There's such an impetus that Putin's a crazy maniac. It's like, wait, crazy people don't stay in power for that long, and it's very, very hard to maintain. Now, I'm not saying he's not a bad person, but it seems to me that whenever you hear these drum beats for war, something else is often going on. So I was really curious, and I was born in Ukraine, so your analysis of the Ukrainian people is I would say is fairly spot on. What do you think is going on with this whole situation, and how do you think our media is feeding into it?
Yeah, I'm utterly perplexed, to be honest. So, because in about 2015, when Russia became this enemy and Putin's evil and everything, I did what you do, which is because we're mildly autistic. I went down a rabbit hole. I was like, okay, well, who's Alexander Dugin? Apparently he's advising Putin, and Alexander Dugin is his modern day Rasputin, is his spiritual advisor. So who are these people? Like, what do they believe? What's Crimea? What happened there? Who lived there? So I actually went down a rabbit hole and did some research. And then of course I've been in Eastern Europe and spent time there and talked to a lot of people there. And I, in general, talked to people at the Turkish bathhouse, Russian bathhouse in New York. I don't know if we can go there anymore. Can I sauna? Can I sauna without riding with Putin?
The banya, yeah.
Yeah. And the issue that I discovered was that Ukraine has an incredibly corrupt regime, incredibly corrupt. People assume that it's this paradise on earth and it's a democracy. It's incredibly corrupt. And then I started to find out that the Bidens, before it became an issue, not just the Bidens, but all the NGOs would use Ukraine as a little test lab for their new far left-wing morality, laundered money through there. There was an election in 2014, but apparently the US regime didn't like that. So they decided they had to get rid of the elected leader, and therefore it wasn't a real election. But then if you question the American election, of course, you're an insurrectionist and you hate democracy and everything. And I just realized, okay, this is complicated. I don't know. I don't know. So then you go down these rabbit holes. So I realized I don't know, but I do know a few things. One, invading a country, bad. I think we all can agree.
Yeah.
You default to a moral framework, which is, okay, invading a country is bad. Ukrainian people have been victimized by the West and by the regime, their own regime, bad. Now they're squeezed between the Russians, bad. Okay, my inclination would be to be pro-Ukraine, because why not? That's where I would go. And then I see George Soros is tweeting about how he's pro-Ukraine. The cast of SNL is having the Ukrainian choir there. Fox News and Jen Griffin are going on there spreading lies like they did with the drone strike that killed civilians. And I'm thinking, oh man, my brain, because your brain has certain little heuristics.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on everything, but I am an expert on knowing that the worst people in the world are saying that you have to be on this position or else you're now the worst person in the world. So I'm sitting there, caught in the middle, and not that this is about me or my emotions. Ukrainian people are squeezed between a corrupt regime, a West that's trying to accelerate moral changes. Zelensky's pro-abortion. He's he's a far left winger in a country that has a very traditional Christian morality. There's even been a conflict a dispute that I've seen within the Orthodox churches of the Russian Orthodox Church and the Orthodox Church outside of Russia, because Ukraine is a very Christian country. And it's extraordinarily complicated. I don't hear anybody talking about any of this. It's just, if you don't think that America needs to enter a no-fly zone and commit troops and start going to war with Russia, then somehow you're pro-Putin. And whenever that becomes a dominant narrative, we all know we have to be careful. So in a sentence, I'm not an expert on Ukraine, but I'm an expert on propaganda, and the propaganda is everywhere.
Yeah, there's, I tweeted out and I saw you retweeted that I don't understand Putin's endgame. And there's a question that is kind of taboo to even ask. And I'll ask it anyway, because I'm talking to you. We don't really have taboos, which is, there seems to be this idea that if Putin took over Ukraine, that he would somehow start committing genocide against the Ukrainians, which I don't see how that is the case. But at the same time, just today, he has started targeting, according to reports, which we have to be taken with a grain of salt, targeting civilian outposts, which we all agree is completely unacceptable, completely beyond the pale, and is unconscionable. But second, the other question is, okay, let's suppose Putin did take over Ukraine. How bad would that be for the Ukrainian people? Now, the argument is this is, be the end of the world and so on and so forth. But to me, things have to be really, really bad before the US has to get involved. It can't just be, somehow like Norway takes over Sweden and introduces more healthcare. What would that, end up look like? The argument is, the Dugin argument, they're saying that he wants to recreate the Soviet Union, that Latvia and Estonia is next. This is Hitler with the Sudetenland and going and so forth. That's a plausible theory, but I would love to hear where this is based on, other than the idea that anyone I don't like is Hitler.
Yeah, I saw your poll, and the poll was, do you think that if Putin took over Ukraine, he would start to kill civilians? And it was interesting to see the results of that poll and how people are thinking about that issue. And everything we've seen is the minimizing civilian casualties, right? Where there was even a video I saw somewhere where the tanks are stopping so that traffic could pass through. And you wonder how much of that is propaganda on the other side.
Sure.
So as of right now, I'm looking at, okay, what am I seeing? What am I not seeing? What should we see? This is how I analyze every issue. Is, okay, I know that a Kuwaiti princess testified that Iraqi soldiers were taking babies from incubators and throwing them on the ground and putting them in a bayonet. And I know that public support for the first war in Iraq, most people think WMDs in Iraq, they think that's where history began, right? And it isn't. The Gulf of Tonkin, every recorded war that we've been into since World War II, and maybe Korea, we don't know yet, was what? Based on like Gulf of Tonkin. Then you go to the first Iraq war, and there's this emotional testimony. This beautiful woman says that she was a nurse. She worked in a hospital. The Iraqis were taking their bayonets and bayoneting babies and throwing babies out of incubators. And then you find out, no, actually, that was a Kuwaiti princess. That whole thing was fake, but that's took public sentiment from nominally against war to pro-war. And then boom, we had the first war in Iraq. And then, of course, WMDs in Iraq. So for me,
and by the way, I got to say one more thing. You may have seen this tweet. I found an AP article from 89 or 90 where George H.W. Bush said that Saddam Hussein's forces are worse than Hitler because they're using civilians as human shields, and Hitler wouldn't even do something like that. So even at the time, it was everything's Hitler.
Right. Except when there's an actual neo-Nazi brigade in the Ukrainian Guard where they're putting lard on bullets. So when they kill Muslim invaders, they call it orcs. And the weird thing too is, I'm not offended that Ukrainian soldiers are calling Chechens orcs. Like, I'm not some shit lib here, like triggered, but we were told that if you claim that there were any neo-Nazis in Ukraine, you're pro-Putin, and that was Putin propaganda. And you're like, okay, here's an official Ukrainian Guard Twitter account calling Muslims orcs, and they're dipping their bullets in lard because they think that is somehow gonna send Muslims to hell, and that's not even how it works. That's just stupid hillbilly shit, right?
Right.
So I'm saying that, and nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. Goes to Kiev, made up. Nobody gives a shit. Snake Island. This stuff is like a Hollywood pitch. You're a producer, Michael Malice, and I got you in the elevator, and I'm like, hey, bro, got an idea? Need this funded? What? Brave soldiers fight to the last man. Fuck you, Russia. We call it Snake Island. It's set up. Whoa. How do I fund that Marvel movie? How do I fund that? So I'm saying all this stuff. And
wait, can you explain to people who aren't familiar what Ghost of Kiev and Snake Island are?
Oh, okay. So if you were on Twitter, like me, a big loser, and that's where you spend a lot of your time.
That makes two of us.
Yeah. Although I do cardio, so I'm not just a total loser. I'm actually getting in my cardio at least, I guess. And reading. I'm the guy at the gym reading Twitter between sets. It's my rest break.
I do that because you need to rest. It's crazy to push yourself. And someone took a picture of me and put it on Twitter.
I'm sure that I've been shamed on TikTok by people that are too young than me, because I'll do a heavy set and I need to ATP resynthesis.
Exactly.
3 minutes. Yeah. What am I supposed to just do here? Like meditate?
Right.
I'm on Twitter. And that's also when people are like, you spend your whole life on Twitter. It's like, I spend my life doing cardio at the gym, at the park with my kids. You know what you do when your kids are at the park? Hey, kids, go learn how to play with other kids. And then I'm tweeting, like, you probably never spend time with your kids. Like, no, actually, I'm a pretty productive guy, probably more productive than you are. But yeah, if I have a 3-minute rest interval, or if I'm doing zone 2, where I'm just trying to keep my heart rate steady at like 130, 140 beats per minute, then I'm tweeting, obviously.
Yeah.
Snake Island was a story that there was this island outpost, and Russia needed it or wanted it for some strategic reason. And there were 13 Ukrainian guards there, and they were told to surrender. They said, fuck you, Russia, kill us. Russia kills them. 13 guys, war heroes. And it was on an island called Snake Island. A beautiful elevator pitch. How do I fund this movie?
Yeah.
Right? Why am I not this creative? And then Goes to Kiev there was Ukrainian fighter pilot who had shot down 5 Russian planes. Now, and that turned out to be, as of now, it appears to be fake. It's been quote unquote debunked, but I was just more, and then we'll get into the Sam Hyde and Adam Kissinger. But to me, hey man, modern air fighting isn't dogfights in World War II. Like, do you know what a modern plane is, what they can do? People think it's like Top Gun and Tom Cruise is flying a jet. That isn't it's not what's happening. Dogfights in the air, one person using an inferior plane shot down 5 other people. It just didn't sound right. So that was, of course, debunked. And then the truly scary thing, and I use scary as actually should instill some fear in you, is that there's an internet comedian named Sam Hyde. And whenever there was a mass shooting, people would post this picture and say, Sam Hyde has done it again. And it would spread like wildfire because everybody wants to be first. Nobody wants to be right. People say the shooter's been identified as Sam Hyde, and they'd show him a picture of a gun. But multiple media outlets fell over the past few years. But then around 2018, people got smart to it, and you kind of knew, like, okay, this is Sam Hyde. Here's what he looked like. So Adam Kissinger says the ghost of Kiev has finally been identified, and his name was like Samuel, the Ukrainian version of Samuel, and it's a picture of Sam Hyde in a jet. And I'm thinking, you're in Congress, you're in charge. I'm terrified. This stuff makes me, things that other people are afraid of, I'm not afraid of. Things like that, I'm afraid of, because you're a fucking idiot. And you're in charge. And then that begs the question, why don't I run? Why don't other good people run? Well, because your life's destroyed. Because unless you're an idiot like this, the regime's going to completely destroy your life. And of course, all of these things, as they come out, I'll debunk them. And now I'm being called pro-Putin because I'm debunking disinformation. And there was even a tweet by a disinformation expert who said, hey, as your resident disinformation expert, I'm here to tell you the truth of the ghost of Kiev doesn't matter. The legend is what matters, and you should push the legend. And this is a person who's, in court would testify in the Alex Jones trial as an expert on disinformation. And he's saying, no, the legend, as long as it feels good and it kind of could be true, it's not really disinfo, it's more like a meme. So we have a total shutdown, and it's clearly coordinated, or there's a hive mind effect. Either way, that's taking me from going, I'm pro-Ukrainian citizen. These are far right-wing people. Far right meaning they're just not psychotic. I'm using the media's terms, not mine. They just believe in their country. So like, I love the Ukrainian people. I know the regime's corrupt, and the regime's being backed up by, there's a television show, Secession, and they gave a speech winning some SAG award or some kind of award. And the actors already got the memo to talk about Ukraine and how everybody has to support Ukraine. So I'm thinking, oh man, my natural inclinations are clearly side with the Ukrainian people. And then I'm getting all this other contrary data. So I'm squeezed in the middle of it to where I'm obviously Putin shouldn't have invaded Ukraine. It's kind of weird that I have to say this, or else prove you're not a communist, prove you're not well, I don't think he should have invaded. I'm obviously against that. I'm obviously pro-Ukrainian people, and I'm pro the Ukrainian people not getting ripped off by Clinton, Biden, NGOs, Soros, and that. So I'm more pro-Ukrainian than all these other so-called pro-Ukrainian people. And so it's a very weird situation to be caught in the middle of it.
Guys, I love my hair, and hair loss is something that people should take serious, and it's not something that you have to deal with just because you're a man. More than 2 out of 3 of men will experience some form of hair loss by the time they're 35. More than 50 million men in the U.S. suffer from male pattern baldness. So let me talk to you about Keeps. Keeps offers a simple, affordable, and stress-free way to keep your hair via convenient virtual doctor consultations and medications delivered straight to your door every 3 months. You don't have to leave your home. 24/7 care and support. Keeps has a network of expert medical advisors, prescribers, and care specialists to support you, and it's cheap, low cost. Treatments start at just $10 a month, and Keeps offers generic versions of the 2 FDA-approved medications to prevent hair loss. Treatment plans are affordable and typically half the cost of pharmacy plans. Keeps has everything your hair needs delivered straight to your door with discreet packaging and proven results. When it comes to your hair, save more, and spend less. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com. That's KEEPS.com/welcome to receive your first month of treatment for free. That's KEEPS.com/welcome to get your first month free. KEEPS.com/welcome. And then you could have luscious, beautiful hair, just like Dave Smith. My fellow Americans, if you have an IRA, 401k, or savings account, things are getting scary out there. The government has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt just hit a record $30 trillion, and inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time before we have to pay the piper. If you have $50,000 or more in retirement savings, your money could be at risk. Call my friends at Goldco to see how you could protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Call 866-443-1876 or go to malicelikesgold.com. They'll give you up to $10,000 in free silver when you open an account. That's malicelikesgold.com. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, I'm sure you saw, and I know the gist of your reaction, but I still want to hear it because when you go on a tear, it's some of the funniest stuff to watch. Joy Behar last week on The View went viral, and because she was saying how, her reaction and hearing at the news what's going on in Ukraine is what's going on with her planned trip to Italy, because she's been planning a trip for 4 years to Italy, and now that looks like that might not be happening. And it was very shocking to me because I was born in Ukraine. I was born in Lviv, which is all the way west. And now this was going to be my 3rd year where I've never been back since I was a kid, since I was 1.5 and left. I was going to go there with my buddy Chris Williamson and film it. And this would be a very intense and emotional experience for me. But that didn't enter my head. My thought is, this is war. This is horrible. So for her to just go on a camera, to me, I was just like, holy crap. What was your reaction when you saw that happening?
That's textbook liberalism. That's what we mean by shit lib, which is, Joy Behar and The View. They're going to lecture us, and they're so righteous. The Avenatti promoters are so righteous, and they know so much more than us. And she's thinking, I was going to go to not Sardinia, but there's Positano, I think it was. I've been there with Sean. It's actually quite beautiful. The Amalfi Coast is quite beautiful. We had custom shoes made for her. The shoemaker even had his own sales pitch where you go in and they custom make, and they do hand make it, in fairness. Oh, Cinderella, the shoe fits perfect. Yeah, they have a whole thing. It's beautiful. The ice cream's good. You're sitting there on the Amalfi Coast. You rent a boat with your friends. It's an amazing time. And she's thinking, well, I was going to go, but then COVID hit. I couldn't go. Finally, I get to go. I'm vaxxed and boosted, and I'm going to go. Well, now there's a war, and I don't think I'm going to go now. Shoot. What happened? What happened to my vacation? And that's where I call the era that we're living in, and I don't know if I coined it or saw it from somewhere else, but I think I came to my own conclusion, is the Glib age, right? The Gilded Age of the 20s before the Glib age, where you need to post a selfie that you were in Ukraine, thinking of the Ukrainian people. Oh my God, when I visited, it was like such a beautiful country. That's the age we live in. It's just a very glib age. shallow, superficial, how do I feel about this? How do I feel being cyberbullied on Twitter? Well, I feel like pretty great. I think it's pretty funny that people, I think it's pretty funny. I feel bad for people in bomb shelters.
Exactly.
I feel bad for them. Like, I still exist. I still have, human needs. This isn't a content, but like, I'm not being oppressed because I'm being called nasty names. Like, people in bomb shelters are the one who are being oppressed, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about it with some level of nuance and sophistication. Like, I mean, for example, you and I have talked, and I think it probably really upset some people, but they couldn't say anything, where I was like, a lot of people in Crimea wanted to join Russia.
Yeah, sure.
And you were like, yeah, that's true. And then people were like, oh shit, what do I say now? Because Malice is Ukrainian or from Ukraine. And he's saying, no, that's just objective. It's just objectively true. Maybe Putin shouldn't have taken it. But then again, maybe the West shouldn't have ousted the president who was elected, whether it was a fair and free election like America's, the most fair and free in world history. Maybe it wasn't as fair and free in ours. But that whole sequence of events was the West said, well, you can't pick your president. We're going to pick your president. And then they were like, okay, well, we're going to take Crimea. And then I've even read too now, and I don't know, you would know this because I'm not pretending to be an expert. The Donbass area was being shelled by Ukrainians. So the areas that were taken by Putin were still being shelled by Ukraine. And that was never covered. So I didn't even know that was happening until a few days ago. So now some people are saying that, well, that was what got one of these conflicts going.
Yes, see, what I'm confused about is, let's suppose, Putin wants those breakaway republics or rebellion republics, however you want to categorize them, to become, reestablished as part of what had been the Soviet Union, now Russia. I would have thought he would have just pumped a lot of money in there, done the propaganda route, forced a referendum, and then that would have had some modicum of international recognition. I don't see how, and he's not a dumb guy at all. And you don't become top guy in the KGB without being a strategist and a Machiavellian and conniving. I mean, the Falkland Islands, the Thatcher lesson of that is you don't negotiate after they've invaded. If they pull out, everything's on the table. We could sit and talk till we're blue in the face, but there's not going to be the single, and Kuwait's another example. We don't negotiate after you've invaded. We only negotiate, beforehand. So given that he still had that on the table, he knew how this was going to play out. If I knew, he knew. He's not dumb when it comes to the West. He's certainly not dumb when it comes to the EU and NATO. So I didn't see how he thinks, I'm going to take these two republics, and Macron and whoever the new guy is in Germany and Boris Johnson, we're all globalist types, are going to be like, well, fair game, old chap. I guess you win this round. That's not how it works. So I'm confused how he thought this was going to end up, as you had just said earlier. Okay, I'm glad you said that, because for the younger people listening, especially, it's worth highlighting. You have a model and I have a model, and this is how actually adults think. So the middle model would go like this. Ukraine, Russia. This is a strange thing happening. Putin. Okay, well, who's Putin? Well, he was a colonel in the KGB. And then when the West destroyed Russia via Yeltsin, and you can read the cover of Time magazine where we brag about how we did regime change in Russia with Yeltsin. I mean, it's the cover of Time magazine. It's available. So this guy navigated the kleptocracy, the oligarchs, the other generals vying for position, and he became the leader of Russia. And he apparently is willing to kill journalists and other people who oppose him, if that's accepted as true. Then your mental model would say, this is a fox. This is a savvy person. Yeah. This is a strategic thinker. This is a Machiavellian without really a sense of a morality. He's a Clinton, right? So I see that Vladimir Putin is Hillary Clinton, who I deeply admire in terms of a strategist. People get mad when I say that, because even MAGA people unfortunately have scrambled brains. They're like, well, how can you say Clinton's, you admire, she's evil? I didn't say I admired her morality. Wait, I disagree. I think Bill's the strategist. I think she's a bad strategist. Okay, well, we can have that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can debate that another time, or maybe it is Bill behind her. But she became Secretary of State. She became senator. She made every kind of right move. But she blew that election. That was hers. She did not have to lose that election. I think she had to, because she was just that unliked. She can't fake likability. And she was just so unliked that so what could she have done differently where she'd have won the election? Well, let's go back to 94, because she cost the Democrats Congress for the first time in 40 years. That didn't have to happen. That wasn't good strategy.
Well, universal healthcare, but a lot of that you're discovering where it is. Bill Clinton, a brilliant strategist, did the assault weapons ban, and then you can find a letter from him a couple years later saying, "Don't ever do that again." There's this big letter you can find from Bill Clinton where he said that don't do gun control like that again. So Bill Clinton did the assault weapons ban because the assumption was like, who cares? Not that many people own them. We'll do the ban, and then that cost the Democrats dearly, and it probably undercut his issue. So it isn't the strategic thinkers can't make a mistake.
Sure.
So Putin. So I just say that's my prior. You know, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, debatable maybe. Putin, they're strategists. These aren't people that underestimate. These are people that are going to carve you up on the table if you them, right? So one, could be he miscalculated. I didn't anticipate this level of coordinated pushback against this. He probably figured, well, we got Georgia, we got Chechnya, and we did actually really bad. Like Chechnya was a pretty nasty war. I'd read about it at the time just because it was interesting as wow, that really happened. This is what was really going on, kind of event. And it could be he thought that, well, I mean, we took Crimea, we took Georgia, you know, we took Chechnya, like we'll take it. The West will complain, they'll do some sanctions, not a big deal. And he underestimated the reaction. So it could be he just made a mistake. That happens. It could be that he's sending in his worst equipment just to get it used and destroyed, and who cared? They want to minimize civilian casualties. From what I've heard, and I have friends in bunkers, so this is not, you know, I saw it on some Twitter account. They have said so far they're not hearing about civilians being targeted by Russian forces. This is just what I'm hearing from people there.
Okay.
Okay. Now, that doesn't mean it won't happen. It doesn't mean it won't change. Some people are saying now that, well, this is being announced that people are being let out of prison from Ukraine and given guns. Okay, we're going to let out the Bloods and the Crips in America because it's all hands on deck. What do we think? This is so stupid about people who are supposed to be adults and serious thinkers. Well, we'll let Ukrainian criminals out. That's a good idea because they're special criminals. We have this bizarro magical thinking. No, just imagine who are the criminals in American prisons. We over incarcerate. Yeah. The rest of the world under incarcerate. So to be a prisoner in other countries, you're going to be probably double or triple the criminal that you have here. So you're going to let them loose and give them guns, and you think that they're not going to like rob civilians? Why do you think that? Right? Like,
or that they're going to be patriots.
Yeah.
Like if you lock me up for 5 years, all of a sudden I'm going to wave the blue and gold flag, right?
Right. Like you're just like, why do you people think this is a good idea? So what'll happen is you'll have civilian casualties, and then they'll be able to pin that on the Russians. Because how do we know? We're on the West. We just know that it's white people. You know, they're all white. They all speak Russian because we don't know how to tell a difference between, you know, Ukrainian and Russian. So it's just, people speaking a foreign language, they're all the same color, killing each other. It must be Putin's forces doing that. And that's, you know, that's where we're all being led to, or that's where the narrative is being led to. So it's unfortunate. So Putin could have just miscalculated, right? Could be he calculated it fully, and they're sending in the first wave was just the guys who really didn't want to be in the fight. So they're not going to go crazy and kill people. They're just going to phone it in. They're not going to want to destroy things. They're just going to kind of like do the job because they have to. They come in, Putin takes the territory. But then, as you said, surely he's war gamed this. Now what? You don't just take a capital of a sovereign country, and now people are like, oh, okay, well, we're ready to negotiate. That isn't how it works, right? It's just literally not how it works. So you're just, that's the cliche of the dog runs after the car and it catches a car. Okay, you caught the car. Now what are you going to do with it, right?
Right.
Okay, you take the capital. What are you going to do now? And clearly he's thought that through. Clearly, I'll just take that as a given. What did he conclude? I don't know. Now, you mentioned Dugin, and I saw a post. I'm not pro Dugin. This might make sense. I don't know. But I remember I read Dugin's book, and when I posted a tweet, I actually got canceled again because that was like it was a forbidden book that you're actually not allowed to read. And I was like, wow. Yeah. So don't read Dugin. You can say Dugin is Putin's spiritual advisor and is the soul of Russia, but don't read his book. Yeah. Because that's bad stuff. But I read that Facebook post that you probably read too, which is, this is not a war with Ukraine. It's a confrontation with globalism on a whole planetary phenomenon. And he goes on and on about the spiritual vision of it. And I'd gone down that rabbit hole. I think it's called, the book I was reading, Russia and the Holy War. So I went down that whole rabbit hole of esotericism, what Dugin and them believe, the occult. I didn't realize Russia was so rich in terms of spiritual tradition, because the West goes, 6% of Russians go to church, therefore they don't have religious beliefs. You're like, well, what percentage of Americans go to church, right? But Americans still have like a religious belief.
Hey guys, you ever feel like you're being followed around the internet and maybe advertisers know a bit too much about you? Well, our sponsor, IPVanish VPN, is here to help you take back your privacy and help you become anonymous on the internet. What is it? IPVanish is a virtual private network, a VPN for short. It's a tool that helps you safely browse the internet. You can use a VPN on your computer, tablet, phone, things like your Fire Stick when you stream media. When you use a VPN, all your data is encrypted. What you're reading, what you're searching, what you're watching, whatever you're doing. And that's important because what you're doing is no one's business but yours. For listeners of the show, IPVanish is offering 65% off their annual plan. It's only $375 a month. IPVanish is super easy to use. You turn it on with one click. It runs in the background, helping to protect you while you're browsing the web. You run into a problem, no problem. IPVanish has 24/7 support by email, chat, and phone. Go to ipvanish.com/malice and use promo code malice. That's MALICE to claim your 65% off savings. Their annual plan is just $44.99 for the first year with our exclusive discount. This is the time to sign up. With our discount and their current promotion, you get a VPN for 65% off the usual offering. And IPVanish is the best of best. They've got a 4.7 out of 5 on Trustpilot with over 6,000 reviews. Remember, it's ipvanish.com/malice to get the deal and start protecting yourself online. Hey guys, Progressive helps you get a great rate on car insurance, even if it's not with them. They have this nifty comparison tool that puts rates side by side, so you choose a rate and coverage that works for you. So let's say you're interested in lowering your rate on your car insurance. Visit progressive.com to get a quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's rate, and then their tool will provide options from other companies, all lined up and easy to compare. So that all you have to do is choose the rate and coverages you like. Progressive gives you options so you can make the best choice for you. You could be looking forward to saving money in the very near future. More money for, say, I don't know, a pair of noise-canceling headphones, an Instapot, more puzzles, whatever brings you joy. Get a quote today at progressive.com. It's one small step you could do today that could make a big impact on your budget tomorrow. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Let's get back to the show.
And so I went down that rabbit hole. So then,
yeah, wait, just to interject from my personal experience, because Ayn Rand, she was on Donahue in 79, and she said it's the most mystical country on earth, which is really weird because in 79, it had been communist for 62 years at that point. But what Americans don't appreciate, because we have this idea that anyone who's a foreigner is bright and brighter than us. And the news media feeds that because they want us to take advice from other countries and be more like them. But it's really not the case, especially with the British. We're not particularly bright, but we're taught that their accents make them smarter than us. But Russians are very big on like things like psychics and like moving. Like my mom took me to this guy who would move his hand near you and heal your energy. So all that kind of stuff, which is in America is so woo woo, and like India is really part and parcel of Russian culture.
Right. And so there's a lot of things going on in America. We definitely have to believe that everybody, if you have a British accent, oh, Fiona Hill, she's so smart. Yeah. She's going to like save the day. But also here's the book. Here's one of the books. A bunch of them I was reading is The Return of Holy Russia, and by Gary. It's a mind it blew my mind. Because you assume that it's just a Christian country or the Orthodox, whatever assumptions we make, because obviously you can't know everything about a country. I was reading it, and it has a really deep spiritual tradition. So a number of people, and it's probably not the citizens, but it doesn't matter. That's kind of what we learned, is that the regime, it's what the regime believes more so than the people. So if the regime believes that this is a Duginist spiritual quest, then they don't really care about the sanctions. They're just like, well, of course you're going to sanction us. You're the great Satan. Of course you're doing this. This is everything that like happens. The Bible says, blessed are the persecuted. That's how you know you're a Christian, is if you're persecuted. So we're in our mind, and I don't know that it is a spiritual war, if that's really what's been happening, but I'm willing to entertain the possibility that this is a Duginist play, and that Putin believes it's a grand spiritual vision. That speech that he gave, which I actually read, the translated version anyway, seemed to suggest a very spiritual. Now, spiritual doesn't mean godly, right? For the people who are listening in, it just means spiritual. You don't have to say that it's your Judeo-Christian centered God or Jesus Christ. When I read that, I thought, okay, he might be on some other shit, as the saying goes. And if that's the case, then you just adjust your mental model. You say, okay, well, he didn't miscalculate. He knew sanctions were going to happen. He knows the oligarchs are going to be mad. He knows that there's going to be inflation. But he thinks it's all worth it because this is part of his spiritual game that he's playing, or the spiritual vision that he has, and that he doesn't care. So if that's the case, oh, great. How do you negotiate with that?
Right. That's much harder. Yeah.
Right. But you at least know that that's where he's coming from. If that's where he's coming from, then maybe use flattery. Then but you have to speak the language of the person, meet people where they are, as the saying goes. You have to realize that if, you, Michael Malice, are motivated by religion, and we learned this in Afghanistan, we didn't learn it in Afghanistan, unfortunately. I can't say here's money.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That's Moloch. That's the language of money and manna. That doesn't work. I have to come to you and say, look, I know that this is a religious vision for you. I understand that. Talk to me about that. See me through it. Like, what does this look like? And then maybe we can come to a resolution, or maybe we can't. Maybe that means it's just going to be a full scale World War III. Who knows? We don't know.
Yeah. I saw a really clever point someone made, because the argument is, well, he's doing this because he doesn't want NATO directly on his border. Ukraine, of course, is not actually part of NATO. But the argument is, well, if that's the case, why is he making his border closer to NATO? Right. So he's just moving toward NATO. That doesn't really kind of reconcile with those two things. And if he is concerned about NATO, which would make perfect sense, why would he make a move that would basically force NATO's hand against him? So that also doesn't really kind of make sense. The other argument I've been hearing is, he's really sick. He's looking all puffy and weird. So this is basically this Hail Mary. He wants to go out in a blaze of glory. I don't think that's makes sense to me, because at the very least, he could have been much more. If it's blaze of glory, this isn't blaze of glory. The Russian military can go a lot harder at a lot more targets, and it could get very, very scary. They've been invoking nukes, which is something which I'm sure you and I are both absolutely terrified at the idea. That fact, we always knew it's on the table. No one doubts that Russia has nukes, but to have that word be thrown out is something, of course, that disquiets a lot of people, which of course could also be a strategy. It could be like, I know there's no situation I would use them, but let me remind people of this to kind of de-escalate tensions. I don't know.
Yeah, Putin is sick, or Putin is madman. This is like Deus Ex Machina. I didn't realize how much Marvel has scrambled the brains of people. You have to have a simple. Oh, he's crazy. I tweeted out something and then I was embarrassed. I don't know if I think somebody new people follow me. They don't get it, but I said Thanos, or Putin is Thanos. NATO is the Order of the Phoenix, and Ukraine are the Stark family.
Yeah.
And people are trying to yell at me. I was like, well, you missed you're just not smart enough, I guess, to be here, or you're new. You're either new or you're not smart enough to be here and you have to leave. But that's the way people see things now. Well, Putin is Dr. Evil and he has a brain aneurysm. Okay. That explains everything that's happening. Nice and tidy, versus me thinking, well, he might be on some spiritual shit. The press talked about Dugin. The irony of that, the only reason I knew about Dugin is the press was talking about it.
Right.
It was the same thing with Bolsonaro's spiritual advisor, who I think just died recently, that I can't think of the name right away. And I tried to read his books, but they weren't translated. But I read as much of the stuff I could. And then one of the professors who worked with him actually followed me on Twitter. A lot of Bolsonaro's people did. So anyway, that's the way it is. If you tell me that Putin is the man that we have to watch out for as our enemy, and then you tell me that this is his spiritual advisor, then I want to find out who that guy is.
Yeah. That's the danger.
Yeah. And then I'm thinking, you're the idiots who told me to read Dugin, and now you're not mentioning Dugin, and you're not mentioning spiritual warfare, and you're not mentioning all this esoteric stuff, and you're not explaining to the public, oh, here's Dugin, here's what Dugin says about it, and Putin finds Dugin influential. So now what do you do? So then the question is, what do you do if everything Putin has done is rational, consistent with his spiritual quest? I don't know, but at least we're asking the right questions. The cliche is always, well, you got to ask the right question first. Yeah, now ask the right question.
Yeah.
So Putin is madman, Putin is dumb, Putin is this, Putin is that. That doesn't get us anywhere, I don't think. And even if Putin is on a spiritual quest, I don't know the answer then to that, but I don't know. at least smart people will start thinking about that.
Yeah, I remember. I think people don't appreciate, even the people listening to this who are as contemptuous as you and I are of corporate media, don't appreciate just how amateurish it often is. Because I remember when President Trump was meeting with Kim Jong-un, and that whole situation was happening. It was unprecedented, historic, and very, very complicated and nuanced. Both for the North Korean people and U.S. North Korean relations. And Fox had this black conservative sheriff. I'm blanking on the guy's name. He had this big, kind of hat on,
Yeah,
and
Clark.
he's yeah, is that who it was? And he's kind of shaking his fist and opining about Pyongyang. And I'm just like, this is completely irresponsible. This guy has absolutely no idea what's going on in North Korea. He has his cookie cutter Republican versus Democrat ideas, and he's trying to port them to kind of international relations. And it's embarrassingly bad because now you have a whole generation of boomers, thinking that they've got Kim Jong-un figured out, and they don't care about the real issue, which is people in concentration camps and the North Korean population who are being starved for political purposes. So a grain of salt is not enough, because there is such an impetus, especially when there's a war, to kind of get on TV and tell people what to think. And they are very contemptuous of podcasts, and like, you're not going to take medical advice from Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has a 3-hour conversation. You and I are having a 1-hour conversation, and we could hash out war games and scenarios. Anderson Cooper, even in a platonic ideal world, has 5 minutes to kind of break this down and explain things, which has been a century in the making. It's not possible.
Yeah, I saw a tweet about somebody who, because I don't watch these networks, somebody said there's 6 people on a CNN expert panel, and they didn't even know if a certain part of the country had armor, something. It was some basic thing that you would know if, like, you're going to have an opinion on it. You would like, oh no, here's the armor and here's how much they have. And they didn't even know. 6 people like, whoa, let's double check that. Then what are you talking about? And speaking of that, like, here's something, we're talking about Dugin, and here's what he says about all the things happening. Is he says, it is clear that all European leaders are part of the Atlantic liberal elite, and we went to war with her. Hence is their normal response. Russia is now being excluded from the globalist networks. She has no choice anymore, either to build her world or to disappear. Russia has taken a course to build this world and civilization. Okay, how do you argue with that? That just means the more you attack them, the more they think that they're right.
Yeah.
And that means they say, well, that just shows that we have to rebuild Russia in a way that's completely independent of the West. I don't know, but you have to, if that's what you have to talk about. Right?
Mike, I got to interrupt you because I just thought of the funniest tweet ever. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm tweeting it right now. I've never done this before, but I'm just tweeting out, Putin just cured COVID. There it goes. Okay.
Yeah, no, COVID, not only is COVID, well, I don't want to get your thing flagged, but not only has COVID disappeared from the conversation, but Fox News is now a reliable network because they're.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. So all of this Fox News, hey, no, they're reliable. Even Fox News, Jen Griffin, these are trusted people now amongst the left.
Overnight.
Yeah. So you can see that just flip. And there was even a sequence in Hoax, my movie, that if your people haven't watched, I'm sure they should watch it.
I agree. I highly recommend it. I've seen it.
And we do a supercut where suddenly Fox News, CNN, MSNBC are like the same, and it's all like glistening pro-war propaganda. So that's where we are, where Jen Griffin is on there saying, wagging her finger at anybody who questions her, and not realizing that Jen Griffin was the person who claimed that an ISIS K member were taken out by a drone strike, and then it like turned out to be civilians. So she's not a reporter.
Children, not just civilians, children.
Yeah, children. And she's just a Pentagon Spox, as a journalist, but now she's reliable. Now the Pentagon can be trusted. Now, everybody's reliable. And then meanwhile, the social media fact check, I remember I had a guy email me to fact check me. I tweeted something like, oh, isn't it interesting that right as blood clots become an issue, there was a push to say that you shouldn't take aspirin prophylactically for blood clots. And he goes, they were going to fact check me and say that I claimed that there was a conspiracy to suppress aspirin as a treatment for COVID. And I was like, that's not even what I said.
Yeah.
That's not what I said. You can read the tweet. And I was like, are you going to lie about me? Because, we can go down that route if that's what you want to do. And I don't even know if he did or not, because I don't Google myself. So I don't even know what they're saying. And I noticed, though, that where those fact checkers aren't fact checking all this propaganda just that's coming out. There was one where it was a Palestinian. It was kind of a famous mimetic moment where a Palestinian girl's yelling at an Israeli soldier. And then people are saying that was Ukraine. There was another video of us like little kids saluting Ukrainian soldiers. And it turned out that video was, or that picture, I think was from 2016. There was just a number of them that were from years past. The Zelensky Army Man pictures, some of them were from months ago. And there's not like, oh, missing context. You make sure you only share truth. They're saying, no, it's okay to share stuff that isn't true, as long as it's, on brand. I don't know, man. That's what gives me hesitation is I clearly want the Ukrainian people to have self-determination for their own country. And that means kick out the NGOs. That I'm so pro-Ukrainian that everyone who isn't on board with me is pro-Putin. I want the NGOs out, the Bidens out, the Clintons out, the Burismas. I want all this stuff fixed. And I want them to have their own elections, free of Putin and free of the Western regime and free of Soros and the NGOs. That's how pro-Ukraine I am. So I'm more pro-Ukraine than, other than you, probably than anybody who could be pro-Ukrainian.
Guys, we got a different kind of sponsor for this episode, the Jordan Harbinger Show. It's a podcast you should definitely check out since you're a fan of high-quality, fascinating podcasts hosted by interesting people, i.e. the exact opposite of this show. The show covers such a wide variety of topics through weekly interviews with heavy-hitting guests. There's a ton of episodes you find interesting if you're a fan. You can check it out. There's an episode for everyone, no matter what you're into. He's got a lot of cool guests. Like one week, he's talking to a hostage negotiator from the FBI. Another week, he's talking to a cinematographer who discovered Lost City in the Jungle. Something for everyone. The podcast covers a lot, but one constant is his ability to pull useful piece of information from his guests. You'll find something useful you can apply to your own life, whether it's an actionable routine change or just a slight mindset tweak that changes how you see the world. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show. That's HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Here's the URL, jordanharbinger.com/subscribe. The podcast on Spotify is jordanharbinger.com/Spotify. And to learn more about Jordan himself, you can just go to jordanharbinger.com/about. Let's get back to the show. Let's switch tacks a little to America. So there's two ways of looking at Biden. He's either a symbol of an empire on its last legs. You have this kind of senile dotard in the White House, or he could be regarded as a symbol of the empire's strength, that they could even take this carcass and drag him across the finish line and install him. Which of those do you think he's closer to the truth?
I vacillate.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. Same here. Yeah. Yeah.
No, as my mind, my mind goes from, well, these people are stupid and it doesn't work anymore to, wow, they really can, when they all get on message, really accomplish something.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now, is they got everybody now to care about a country that they couldn't spot on a map. And not only that, but to have strongly held opinions about the country. And not only that, but to hate people who don't have those same strongly held SNL cast, SAG endorsed views. That was done in about 72 hours. Remarkable, right? Remarkable. So I go from, the propaganda, as you would say, the propaganda isn't necessary if they're winning, to they still outnumber us, and they're still effective at what they do. And then a lot of that too goes to the uniparty effect. There's not really a resistance at least when it comes to war. Everything else is, tax rate here or there, whether you're going to pay 39% or 45 as the top marginal tax rate. There's not really a debate when it comes to war, but I will say the biggest, I don't know what pill it is, white pill, red pill, blue pill, black pill, purple pill. A lot of people that I considered very smart and that I even admired to a certain degree completely have lost the plot and have become total NPCs on this. And I won't name names, but probably you read the same men. And I'm thinking, you just went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You're sharing fake stuff. You're just wrong. You can have an opinion. You can think Putin's evil. I don't care. I'm not saying, fine, say that. Don't care. But you can't say that Snake Island is real. You're just wrong.
Right. Yeah.
You're wrong. Now, if your position is that, wartime propaganda keeps people excited, well, great. Okay. So then what you're saying is that you want every Ukrainian man, woman, and child to fight to the death against a superior military force. But you're pro-Ukrainian. Oh, so you're so pro-Ukrainian that you want civilians with no training to take AK-47s and just start shooting them at tanks?
Right. Yeah.
What do you have you thought this through, right? And apparently they haven't. So I have lost.
No, they think it's Braveheart.
Yeah. It's just like I've fired, I've been in the military. I've fired all kinds of weapons. And like, I know they're loud. So whenever I see people with these guns, like, well, do you have earplugs? Like, I realize if somebody breaks into your house, you have to do what you got to do, but like you should have hearing protection. Do you realize how loud these things are in a closed environment? And that like, you're just going to shoot out the window in a small house and blow up your eardrums? Like, and you don't have like any more magazines in it. Some of them, these pictures don't even have the AK-47 banana magazine and them, let alone a mag carrier. This is all, it's just absurd, right? And because think about the Western interest, the regime's interest. Zelensky had said, and again, I don't even know it's true or not. So everything I'm saying, I'm qualifying. I don't know if this is true, seems true. Zelensky was talking about sitting down with Putin to talk about a ceasefire or some kind of resolution. The State Department said you can't do it. Soros tweeted out you can't do it because then that would give legitimacy to an invader. So from their perspective, they don't give a shit if Ukrainian citizens take up arms and die. That's good for them. That's good for the Western regime, is for citizens to, in some kind of like delirious state, think you're going to go out and just like point, I know what I'm doing. And if like a tank pulled up in my neighborhood, I'm running, right? And retreating. And maybe I can get with like 10 other guys and we can like work something out. And then because an insurgent warfare against tanks would be like destroying your own roads, destroying your own bridges. It's not like a nice thing.
Yeah, of course.
You can't just, I'm going to shoot, but the tank and the bullets are going to go through like G.I. Joe. So you're going to like do what? No feel the fire? How do you know you're not shooting the person across from you who's not your own ally? It's a whole, but for the Western regime's perspective, they want to encourage that. Whereas if you actually cared about the Ukrainian people, you would want some kind of ceasefire negotiated. And then you could go from there. But the West views that as a win for Putin. And probably that's what maybe, going back to what was Putin thinking, and we can't really know, and spiritual or not, whatever the case is, it could be that he just figured, we'll take some land, Zelensky will have a sit down with us. We'll take this area, we'll tell them stop bombing the occupied territories, like no more of that, give up the NATO thing, I'll leave, I'll save face, and then I'll deal with the sanctions and all the repercussions. And then maybe that's what he wanted to do. I don't know. That's saying, but now that the West is saying you can't do that. You have to fight down to every last Ukrainian man, woman, and child. I don't see how that's pro-Ukrainian.
Yeah, I've often said, and I'm sure you agree, that the establishment's bloodlust for war cannot be overstated. Like, they really are against this idea of like every war has to be a jihad, has to be a holy war. It can't be that like we're fighting, both sides are like, you know what? It doesn't matter at this point. We started. We're both sick. We both want a ceasefire. We're neither going to get what we want, but there are at least people we're going to live, and we could go back to some modicum of normalcy. Like, that does not compute, because everything has to be in the most kind of, talk about spiritual war. Everything in the West has to be this really kind of fight to the finish, conqueror takes all situation.
And it's all with a very childish worldview. So
yes, yeah.
Armenian Christians were slaughtered in 2020, and I didn't see hardly anybody give a shit about that. Dave Smith and other people talked about it. Dave Smith and other people talk about Yemen. Like, I don't know what to do. I talked about it a few times. What am I supposed to post Yemen? It's like, there are things happening in the world that are a lot worse than what's happening right now.
Right.
But if I don't care about this thing happening right now, even though on a scale of the slaughter that happened to the Armenians, the first Christian nation, their land was just taken from them. Oh, but Turkey's a NATO ally, so it's different. And Zelensky actually congratulated the forces that had killed the Armenians. So there's this whole swirl of like, how dare you, right? To quote Greta, our favorite person, is, how dare you tell me about this? You don't give a shit about anything, you fucking idiots. You don't care about anything. You don't care about humanity, people, who's getting bombed. You don't care about cluster bomb sales. You don't care. You don't even know about Qatar and human trafficking in Qatar, and who built the World Cup facilities. You don't know about any of this stuff. And then they're going to wag their little fingers at me as if I have to believe what they believe immediately because they turned on the TV and plugged their little
Right.
mining via cord to the TV. Like, go fuck yourselves.
There's someone, so you've been going at very hard at Jordan Peterson recently, so someone who I have quite a high opinion of, and I'm very curious why that happened, because you don't really go hard on most people, and you've been doing it for a few weeks. Can you give me the backstory there, and what am I missing?
Okay, I hate to say going hard. So he did this thing with Kavanaugh during the Kavanaugh hearings. First of all, I have a number of biases. One bias is that I would rather not talk about your country if you don't talk about my country.
Sure.
So I never would have tweeted about this Canada trucking thing until Canadians just mucked up my country and had strong opinions. Otherwise, I would say, Ottawa, whatever you're doing, whatever. So I don't like foreigners meddling in my country. One. Two, I don't like a foreigner saying that Brett Kavanaugh should have resigned. If confirmed, resign. He wrote a whole blog post. He said that Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed to the Supreme Court. In the interest of healing and unity of America, he should resign. Okay, two things are wrong there. One, you're Canadian, you're not American. I don't want to hear you talk about Kavanaugh at all. Two, that goes against everything you teach. So if the mob smears you falsely as a rapist, as a gang rapist, he was accused of forming rape gangs and getting women intoxicated by Michael Avenatti. It was all fake. So you're saying that, you being Jordan Peterson is saying that if you're smeared falsely, then you should resign. Okay, did Jordan Peterson resign from the university when he was called a transphobic bigot? No. So you're meddling in our shit, and you're meddling in a way that goes against your own morality, and you're meddling in a way that's just weak and cucky. So that one really set me off. And then he took a little pot shot at Tucker when Patriot Purge came out.
Tucker Carlson, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
When Patriot Purge, the film about January 6th came out from Tucker, he tweeted out something like, damn them to hell if they're lying. So if Tucker's lying, because Patriot Purge was, it took a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, so you're going after Kavanaugh, and now you're going after Tucker about American issues that you don't know anything about. I don't want to hear about it. And then the third thing, and this is more, those two I consider not controversial. Those two I consider that if you're a rational person, you would say, yeah, Jordan, why would you say that Kavanaugh should resign? Because he was falsely smeared as a rapist. And he wrote a whole blog post, but it's not compelling and it goes against his own morality. And plus he never resigned. He did recently. So you're just why would you say that? And then you would say well, why are you taking the regime's position on January 6th to going against Tucker? Defend yourself, man, or at least articulate your point of view. Why do you think this? Do you think that the January 6th narrative is true and that it was an insurrection and that the QAnon shaman was going to become the head of a puppet state? Do you really believe that? Maybe you do, but let's hear it, let's hear it. So he's just objectively wrong on those two. And then the third was, and this is subjective, and I think that he became addicted to benzos like many people do. And rather than just say, you know what, I became addicted to benzos. Happens to a lot of people. Addiction's a sad thing. I went to rehab. A lot of people are dying. I'm just a man like everyone else. It became this whole story. Well, my wife had cancer and it was iatrogenic. My body responded uniquely to benzos in a way that maybe other people's don't. And that's why I got addicted and everything is. And it just felt to me like I'm special. I'm so special that I get addicted in a way that's special and that other people don't get addicted. So I felt that was myth making and storytelling rather than just say, hey man, addiction happens to everyone. Because I don't addiction shame. A lot of people did. And I thought that was the most ghoulish thing in the world. I lost a friend to addiction, recently dead, and I think most people by now have lost a friend or a friend of a friend to addiction. So why can't you just say, hey, I was an addict. It happens. Here's how it happened, instead of, casting this grand narrative about it. Right. So I just thought that was kind of sleazy. But the main thing is, if you're going to meddle in the US stuff, you better be right. And you better be consistent with your own morality. And then, of course, there was a whole thing where he tweeted out, I took the vaccine because I thought that they would leave me alone if I did. But that's more like rolling your eyes at the boomer dad.
Right. Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because you're just like, oh, come on, your whole work is about cooperating. Like, this is literally like your life's work being. It's this weird thing where Jordan and Trump are the perennial boomers, where coronavirus was Trump's moment from God, where your life's work about China and we need borders and we need industrial capacity. Here you go. It's like a layup. Here you go, Trump. This is why you talk about supply chains, borders, domestic capacity. Take the layup. And then Trump's like, oh, Corona, he downplays it, right? So with Peterson, you're like, brother, this is your life work. Don't give him an inch. Don't collaborate with evil at all. Don't do anything, because we know that they're never going to stop. Like, how do you boomers always like miss that moment? But that was more like an eye roll. I didn't view that as like a great, because like a great mistake or something like that. But I don't really want to see people attacking Tucker Carlson if they don't live in the US, especially if they're attacking them with just regime talking points. And I don't want to see people saying that Kavanaugh should have resigned because he was falsely smeared in the worst possible way, especially if that goes against your philosophy. Now, if Peterson were a nihilist and he were Noam Chomsky, then I would just be like, well, Noam Chomsky is being Noam, Noam Chomsky. He's going to Noam Chomsky. So those are the issues. And he's never really, I hate this term because I don't like shaming culture necessarily, but I feel like I'm the only person who said those things, because, he's Grandpa Peterson. So his own little clique, like Sam Harris hates conservatives. So Sam Harris is going to say, well, Jordan, like, why did you say Kavanaugh should have resigned based because he was falsely smeared? How is that like moral? Nobody on his little clique is going to say that. And then if you're conservative, like, everybody loves the guy. And I've said he's a net good many times, such a net good many times. So it's like, but, if you're going to say that, then who's going to be the guy? Who's going to be the devil's advocate, right? Who's going to be the person saying, why would you say that?
Okay.
And that kind of has to be, someone has to, and that's me. And I engage in a lot of self-critique of myself too. So it isn't like hating necessarily, but it's more so like, you said these things, they're not true. They go against your philosophy. Defend yourself, man. Like, why? What's your point? Like, why'd you do that?
I'm Dave Detman, also known as Dr. Gadget. I've got a new podcast called The Big Idea, and every week I talk to inventors and visionaries who made it big in their respective industries. We'll tackle weekly trending tech, provide inside tips for your success, and go deep dives on the latest and greatest innovations. And I know you're going to love this part. I'll also have plenty of free giveaways. Who doesn't love free stuff? So listen to and follow The Big Idea with me, Dr. Gadget, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast One, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's get back to the show. We're 8 months out from November, but it's people always talk about how things aren't turning in politics, and that's true. But at the same time, trends do have a way of kind of snowballing, and especially when it comes to things like the midterms. Do you think it's going to be as much carnage at the polls in 2022 for the Democrats as the tea leaves seem to say?
Well, that's why they're trying the Ukraine thing,
Okay.
right? January 6th didn't work. It just doesn't poll in the top 10 issue. So if you're not, January 6th didn't work, doesn't poll well. The State of the Union, they're taking their masks off now. The science has magically changed in time for the State of the Union. So they're going to pivot on the masks now.
Is that true? They're taking the masks off?
Yeah, that just came out last night.
Wow.
It's going to be mask optional, I think, is the way.
Wow.
They put it. Yeah, that was just last night.
Even though COVID deaths are higher now than they were a year ago today.
COVID is the one thing that I still like. Ukraine and Russia. I don't really understand COVID, man. I know that people died, and I know that I still get shit on because I was an early COVID warner. By my own side, I still get attacked, and they told me I panicked and everything. And I'm like, dude, I know doctors who lost colleagues. Like, It was real. It was real. You can say it was overblown, but you can't tell me that like it wasn't real. But we also know people died because of the ventilators.
Sure.
People are still dying now. I don't understand, man. I wish that, and that's why I try to be that voice on Ukraine or COVID or Jordan Peterson for that matter. I try to be that voice. It's like, hey, man, this is kind of the whole picture. Like, what really, because these are complicated questions. And you can't reduce them. Like, you can't just say good, bad, good, evil, right, wrong. These are really, really complicated questions. And that's where I am with COVID too, is like more people are dying now. I don't know, man. I know that they're counting deaths now. They're saying with versus of. That's something that could have got banned from social media for saying a year and a half ago. There's so much going on, and there's no real, other than Joe Rogan or somebody, there's no real clearinghouse to try to get a full point of it. Basically, if your full time isn't studying these issues, I don't know how anybody has any idea what's going on.
But so what do you think is going to happen? So you do agree that it's looking like it's going to be a complete disaster for the Democrats in November?
Looks like a bloodbath. I lost count, but I want to say 15 or 20 Democrats aren't seeking re-election.
No, I think it's like 30. It's some kind of record.
Yeah. So I study this, and you can't even keep track. So Democrats clearly think they're going to lose. They know that the masking is a bad issue. They know that school closures hurt them. They know that the inflation can't be denied. But I mean, look what they did with Ukraine in 72 hours. Maybe they embroil the U.S. in something. I don't know. I don't think it's going to work. I do think it'll be a GOP bloodbath. But I also know that the world moves so fast now, and I didn't realize so many people could lose their minds this quickly, as I've seen with my whole model of propaganda has changed now, because now the regime has learned how to accelerate propaganda via social media in a way that we've never seen before. So I
think we've also had a population who have been trained to spend 2 years in a state of, at the very least, low-key panic. Right. So it's not that hard to turn up that dial to be like to full-blown panic.
Right. And that's why I feel conflicted about me being an early warner of COVID, because like I didn't resist early on, because it was like, I know people are dying. And I was like actually quite frustrated with friends of mine who were, saying this isn't happening. It's like, do you know a doctor? Talk to your friends in the doctor. They're short-staffed. ICU rooms are closed. I talked to someone the other day who had been a retired doctor for 15 years. She had retired. They were like, come in. And she goes, what are you talking about? I haven't been in an ICU in 15 years. I don't know. Okay. Like, we'll train you. Here's a book on ventilators. Like, that's how bad it was. That first wave. Now we haven't seen a wave like that since. So what happened? I don't know. But it clearly happened. But now people have become addicted to fear. But our people aren't. Like, the people who read me are falling for this stuff. And they were the ones telling me that they were the ones attacking me when I was warning about coronavirus. And now they're just full on in. So I think what the regime realizes, the left will do anything that they're told. They'll go from riots are good, truckers honking their horns is bad.
It's terrorism.
Yeah, it's terrorism. Green New Deal occupying the House, good. Trying to break down the Supreme Court doors, good. January 6th, insurrection, coup, biggest threat to democracy in history. So now the regime, the propagandists, the MK Ultras, COINTELPRO, they just have to split the right like a little bit. So and then they have their numbers, right? So they know that they have a full 40% of the country fully brainwashed, 20% say up for grabs, 40% say right wing. They just got to peel off, 10, 20% of the right wing, and then the middle will fall into place. So that's what we're seeing happening here in real time.
So when I interviewed you for the New Right, one of the things you talked about, I think it was 60 Minutes, and they were going to talk to you, Mike Cernovich, a conspiracy theorist, and you had prepped really hard for it, and then they hit you with Hillary's health, and you were telling me how it was funny. You're like, oh, I studied for the SATs, and you're giving me a first grade spelling test. What I wanted to ask you about is, how bad do you think Biden's health actually is?
I don't think anyone thinks his health is good. Okay. Not even, because they would be calling for press conferences, right? Remember, they would say Donald Trump hasn't given a press conference in 92 days. But then you're like, no, but he talks to the media every day. What do you mean? So they were so desperate to find something that they would redefine press conference to mean like this thing. And they're not doing that for Biden. Biden's late. Clearly his medication they can't time it perfectly. Clearly he doesn't look lucid. Anyone who's had a relative like that knows what it looks like when they're sundowning, knows that like vacant look in their eyes. I think a poll just came out, I saw yesterday, 58% of the country now thinks that he has like a serious health defect. I don't think anyone thinks he's doesn't have dementia, myself included. Clinton, I don't know, man, maybe I was wrong about, I'll admit, maybe I was wrong about Clinton, because she's like every bit the Wicked Witch is still being a Wicked Witch.
Yeah.
So maybe I was wrong, because she seems her same usual diabolical self. Like, I think she could probably be given press conferences. So either she got really good medication or, I was wrong and I'll have to take the L on that down the road.
No, because there's this, I think it was Chris Rock who had that joke. I'll just say the punchline because I don't want to get too graphic about, I don't eat anything that bleeds for a week and doesn't die. She's been coughing for 30 years. But
yeah,
she's still, wagging her finger on TV. So I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. So if people are saying, well, you were wrong, she's still as healthily unhealthy as she's ever been, I'll say, well, you actually got a good point there. That I might have to take the L on that. With Biden, there's just nobody who looks at him and would think that he is fully lucid. And that's why he's kept out of the press. There's videos where he's going the wrong way. It's kind of sad, actually. Probably the reason I don't harp on his health much is with Clinton, I've just viewed her as uniquely evil. Biden is a bad person. If you can go back and watch his old videos, all this stuff that Biden was a uniter. Biden's never been a uniter. Look what Biden did to Clarence Thomas in the confirmations hearings. Go after yourself. But Biden is to the point that, because I was a at-home caretaker of someone with Alzheimer's, and it's sad to watch someone lose track of their faculties. They wake up in terror because, imagine every time you woke up. That is horrific. I feel bad. Now, on the other hand, he's our president. That shouldn't be off limits. But just for me as a human being, there's so many other things that I can focus on that I don't emphasize his.
And especially because he's such a party hack. I mean, he's very much a Democratic Party machine. He's been in Congress, in the Senate since he's 30, had a safe seat for 40 years. He really is, he's not an Obama figure or a Clinton figure or a Trump figure or even a W figure. He's just, they pulled him out of nowhere and just okay, you're going to be our guy. Mike, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
The point of view of someone like you who has a bias in a geopolitical situation and is willing to not let your own emotional biases interfere with rational thought and strategic thinking, because that's where people go wrong.
You are welcome.
This February on Pluto TV, we're putting the spotlight on iconic Black talent. Watch your favorite movies like Top 5, 48 Hours, and More Than a Game. And drop in to binge Black TV classics like The Bernie Mac Show and Moesha. Pluto TV has hundreds of channels and thousands more movies and TV shows, all for free. So download the Pluto TV app on your favorite streaming device and start watching today. Pluto TV, drop in, watch free.